And he saw that the one great solution was to make a daily effort to be invisible, which is the same thing as being non-aggressive. Now it was getting closer. Now he was understanding. So he got up in the morning and he went to the scientific laboratory, and he went to lunch with his colleagues, and he went to dinners with scientists, and he continued his life exactly as it was before, with one exception. Wherever he went, he made a deliberate, conscious effort to keep himself invisible. That is, to not attract attention of other people or of himself. Oh, what a long, hard experiment and practice he had set before him now. Because that meant when he was seated at the dining table with his colleagues at lunch, there were 5 or 6 of them around the table, he understood how he used to behave on occasions like that. He'd talk a good deal, and he was pretty emphatic in his opinions. And he wanted people to notice him talking, of course. And he wanted them to be impressed with what he is saying. And he understood that this was aggression, which caused him to not live his own life. And he saw at the very start of his investigation, when he was seated around that dining room table with the other people around it, men and women around it, he understood that if he made a deliberate effort to go against the way he usually behaved, that was what is known as making himself psychologically invisible. What you see, do you not? Nobody notices an invisible man. Nobody gives attention to an invisible man. Nobody can give him medals. Nobody can tell him how marvelous he is. And now he came into this state which you've heard described before. This condition where you understand what you have to do, but you're afraid to do it. And everything in you screams out, go back to the way you were, where it was comfortable, where it was easy, where you could just be as aggressive as you wanted. He couldn't do it because he remembered the first statement, self-statement he had found, which was that he was not living his own life, and he wanted his own life more than he wanted everything else on earth. What a beautiful statement that was. So he practiced. And here's, for example, another thing he started to do to make himself invisible, to get his life back. Say he was with just one other person. You understand, this is the lecture. I'm talking to you. He was with just one other person, for example. And in the past, he, of course, would like to talk all about himself and his achievements, while appearing to be modest about it, of course. But in his search and his success towards self-recovery, he began to understand something that very few people ever really understand deeply and thoroughly, which is that when there are 2 people seated at a table, that there are 2 people seated at the table. Egotists, self-centered people, people who are just looking for something to pounce on, something to get themselves excited about. The only thing that exists to them is the physical body of the other person across the table. That's all. Their psychology doesn't exist at all. The way they think doesn't exist, and they don't care. The scientist was beginning to mature a little bit. Here's this great man who knew he was immature. Do you see it? What do you think the rest of the world's great people are like? Pretty much like the scientist, right? And he watched, say, for example, he watched a lady friend across the table, and he saw how he used to behave toward her, how he interrupted, how he boasted, how he was thoughtless of her. Having seen that that was his aggression, his wrong aggression, which kept him away from his real life, he began to notice strange little improvements in himself. And first of all, he would visibly, of course, with his eyes, look at the other person across the table. And he would see that that other person for the moment wanted her mind to herself, so he never spoke. Don't you see how profound that is? If you can catch another person, excuse me a minute, catch another person in their own mind, wanting to do a certain thing, say a certain thing, and you're so aware of it that you're going to sit back and let them have their own mind for the moment. You see another person about to speak to you, and instead of you speaking first, because you're awake, you see them about to speak, and you don't speak. You see what I'm talking about? You see what's happening? You're letting that person live his life. You don't interrupt. I'll give you another example. Listen to this. You know how we all want to be humorous and witty and funny and make clever remarks, cleverisms? You know that? How we all want to impress someone. I want you to notice the next time you do that, that your cleverism may cause discomfort to the other person. Because that other person knows that you're expected to laugh at the joke, at the funny remark. You're expected, and they do laugh at your remark maybe, but it's mechanical and forceful and mechanical. And can't you see that they did it not wanting to do it? And you led them into a wrong, unnecessary, wasteful response because you are aggressive and wanted to be visible. You follow this? You understand that? So this is the way his work progressed. He watched all of the world. He watched people closely, very personally, and found out where he was imposing himself on them. And let me tell you, those of you in this room, if you knew how far you have to go to even start having common courtesy to other people. You are not courteous if you are lost. Now you go ahead and get mad if you want. If you're a 5-year-old kid, that the only response you know to being told the truth is to get mad, then you get mad. And you'll burn yourself, and you will have to start sooner or later where that scientist did to find out that you are not living your life, but the life of a very dark force that's taken you over, and all you know what to do in the face of something that is truthful is to reject it with hostility. Do you think that a person who is always angry is living his own life, or has something captured him? Do you think that a person who is greedy, who is jealous, do you think that a person who is in perpetual fear is leading his own life, or is he a slave of everything that comes along? You know the answer to that. Let's review briefly. Whoever you may be, and I'm talking to those of you watching this film, I know you. I know all about you. I know the expressions on your faces, even though I'm not where you are. I know what's going through you internally. I'm just stating a fact. And I know that in that condition, you are not leading your own life. And you should be very grateful for what you're hearing tonight, because this could be the start of you ceasing to be a slave to yourself. Point 2, do you understand what I said about aggression? Did you begin to understand that it's an unconscious force that goes out in which we want to attract attention to ourselves because we're so scared, so insecure, and we always want to prove that we're right. At the top of our voices, we yell that we're right. If you're right, you don't have to shout at the top of your voice. Truth is very, very quiet because it's very, very confident. And can you see at the last that there's a lot of work for you to do in understanding what it means to be invisible, to not care care whether you make an impression on anyone or not, to not care whether you conquer the world or not. What do you care about this social world? You've got a better world. And only those people, those very few rare individuals who live in this other world, can bring the cure to this sick social world that we're all living in. A person on the level of the sickness of this world can only contribute sickness to it, nothing else. A divided person can only offer division to the world. Only a sane and a decent person can tell the world about sanity and about mental health and show them what it is. So you're going to have to judge what your actual condition is. What is your answer to my question to all of you here tonight and watching this film? What is your answer to my question? Real honest now, sir, madam. Real honest now. You can't get out of it. You're not going to fool me. And you're not going to fool truth either. Are you living your own life, or are you a captured slave who suffers? Which is it? Now, if you have the honesty to admit that you're not living your own life, you can be as wise as the scientist was. You begin to study your condition. And you can begin to see that there is indeed a way out of this delirious world. So, you will agree, will you not, that the truth you've heard here tonight, for example, is the kindest, most compassionate force on earth, and that nothing but the truth is compassionate. It's not trying to hurt you at all, as you may have thought during this talk. It's not trying to hurt you, but trying to heal you, giving you an opportunity to not suffer from living with yourself. I'll tell you once more, don't you try to kid me. You won't succeed. You'll just hurt yourself. And that's not said fiercely. Truth's invitation is very gentle, very quiet, and very compassionate. And if you want to know what that compassion is, what that beauty is, then you take the attitude that the scientist did and say, no matter what the world has given me or what I want to get from it, I'm going to look much deeper than that, because I look around at other people and I look at myself. You're saying this to yourself, you understand? And I see the folly of trying to win in this world, win socially, as everyone else is trying to do. Of course they all. Who said you had to follow everyone else in the world? Truth tells you something entirely different. It says, follow me, and all will be different. You won't be a slave anymore, and you will live very quietly and very naturally your own free life.